Every person is to be subject to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it is a servant of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For it is a servant of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Pay to all what is due them, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom, respect to whom respect, honor to whom honor. Romans 13:1-7.
Namaskar. Welcome to Gnani's World.
Happy 75th Independence Day to all our fellow Indians. Our sincere heartfelt gratitude to all the freedom fighters and leaders who sacrificed themselves for the freedom which we are enjoying today. Today, we will make a small attempt to refute the false assumptions and gross distortion of facts. There are many Hindutva ideologues and organizations that accuse Christians in India that they did not participate in the freedom struggle. M.S. Golwalkar, 1906 to 1973, who was the leader of the RSS for more than 3 decades, says in his Bunch of Thoughts, 1966-1996, that Christians in India are not merely irreligious but also anti-nationals and internal threats to the security of the nation. He alleges that the Christians, in general, kept themselves aloof from the freedom struggle. In fact, they were on the side of the British who belonged to their own faith. The British in turn helped the Christian missionaries to materialize their agenda. Arun Shourie, a prominent BJP leader who was a cabinet minister in the former BJP-led NDA government, states in his Missionaries in India, 1994, a view similar to that of Golwalkar. Shourie says, for over 100 years thus missionary activity was interwoven with and inextricably tied up with British imperial control of India, that the missionaries, even those of Indian origin, did not join the independence movement was not an accident. The saffronized NCERT school textbook for class 9 students on social sciences entitled Contemporary India, 2002, while discussing the freedom movement, bashes the Muslims and communists as non-patriots and totally ignores the Christian contribution to the freedom struggle. Obviously, the aim is to create a new generation of Indians fully indoctrinated in the Hindutva ideology who will hate these communities as anti-nationals. The accusation that Christians did not participate in the freedom struggle is a very serious one against the Indian Christian community and is a gross distortion of facts. But the distortion cannot be dismissed as mere ignorance, but deliberate and ideologically motivated. However, the true history of the Indian independence movement presents us with a different picture than that which Golwalkar, Arun Shourie, and the NCERT textbook provides. In spite of their insignificant number, they did contribute their share in the freedom struggle, as the following analysis, though not exhaustive, will show. Felix Wilfred, an internationally renowned theologian, notes that those who look objectively at the history of the freedom struggle in India would admit that there were Christian missionaries who gave full support to the nationalist cause, to the embarrassment and indignation of the British colonial government. Among these missionaries, the more well-known names are Stanley Jones, C.F. Andrews, J.C. Winslow, Warrior Elvin, Ralph Richard Kethan, and Ernest Forrester Pato. Some missionaries were even deported from India for their support to nationalist cause. Given this situation, missionary sources do not speak about the political and nationalist involvement of missionaries for fear of having to come under the censure of the government. In spite of this, there were numerous Christians who involved themselves in the freedom struggle. George Thomas, a well-known church historian, maintains that the Indian Christian community played an influential role, especially in the early phase of the Indian National Congress, founded in 1885, which was the premier instrument of political nationalism. According to him, the influence of Christians was impressive in the various sessions of the Indian National Congress. For example, in the third annual session of the Congress in 1887, out of 607 participants in the session, 35 were Indian Christians, and among those who addressed the assembly was Madhusudan Das, 1848 to 1934, popularly known as Tilgoram, a well-known leader from the Christian community in Orissa. The number and influence of Indian Christians continued to be impressive in the subsequent sessions of the Congress. Kali Charan Banerjee, 1847 to 1907, a Bengali Christian and a fine orator, regularly addressed the annual sessions of the Congress in molding the policy of national movement. In the Congress session of 1889, among the 10 women delegates, 3 were Christians: Pandita Ramabai Saraswati, 1858 to 1922, Mrs. Triambak, Mrs. Nikambe. There are records of active Christian participation in the Swaraj movement, 1905, the non-cooperation movement, 1920, the civil disobedience movement, 1930, and the Quit India movement, 1942. Since the 1920s, many Christian institutions and organizations like the All India Conference of Indian Christians, the National Christian Council of India, Christian leaders and student groups related to United Theological College, Bangalore, Serampore College, Bengal, St. Paul's College, Calcutta, Bengal, Malabar Christian College, Calicut, Kerala, the Youth Christian Council of Action, Kerala, the Student Christian Movement of India, the Indian Christian Association of Bengal, a conference of Christians in Bombay, a meeting of Christians in Palamkota and Tirunelveli, and the like, passed resolutions expressing complete solidarity with the freedom movement. Some of them even took part in massive manifestations against the British colonial government. In 1973, the government of Tamil Nadu published a list of freedom fighters of the state in 3 volumes under the title Who is Who of Freedom Fighters, Tamil Nadu. From these volumes, D. Arthur Jaikumar has culled the names of 103 persons who have been positively identified as Christians. Basing ourselves on Jaikumar's findings, we mention some of the outstanding Christians of Indian origin who took part in the freedom struggle. J. C. Kumarappa, original name John Jesudaso Cornelius, 1892 to 1960, was a veteran Congress leader. He received degrees from Ohio Wesleyan University, Boston University, and the universities of Harvard and Columbia. He was professor of philosophy for some time at Lucknow University. On 9 May 1929, he met Mahatma Gandhi at Sabarmati Ashram, and that resulted in their becoming close associates. He was a strong supporter of Satyagraha and encouraged Christian participation in the national movement. Before Mahatma Gandhi started off the Dandi March in 1931, he encouraged Kumarappa to write regularly for his weekly, Young India, and informed him that he would be its editor after his imprisonment. Thus Kumarappa became editor of Young India, and his fiery writings gave him 1.5 years of rigorous imprisonment in 1931. But fortunately he was released after a couple of days, because of the Gandhi-Irwin Pact. He took up the editorship of Young India from Mahatma Gandhi in 1932, which again sent him to jail and was detained in Nasik prison for 2.5 years. In 1942, he was under detention and trial for a year and a half in both Bombay and Nagpur. During the Quit India movement, he had a hand in the underground activities in Bombay along with his Congress colleagues. These secret sabotage activities led to his arrest. He was sentenced to 2.5 years of rigorous imprisonment for 3 charges and sent to Jabalpur Central Jail until 1945. After his release from the prison, his health completely broken down by then. He took rest at the guest house of Leonard Theological College, Jabalpur. In July 1947, he joined the delegation nominated by Government of India to help India's economic interest in maritime transport at the meeting of shippers in London. Since he was also a prominent figure in Congress affairs, he was given a chance to be a member of the All India Congress Working Committee in place of Jai Prakash Narayan in 1947. But he rejected the offer in spite of Gandhi's persuasion. Paul Ramsamy, born 1906, was another important Christian who took part in the freedom struggle. In 1930, he joined the freedom movement during the Salt Satyagraha days. He picketed the Bishop Harbour College, Tiruchirappalli. He was arrested and sentenced to 6 months of imprisonment and was kept at Tiruchirappalli and Alipuram jails. Venkal Chakrai, born 1880, participated in the civil disobedience movement started by Mahatma Gandhi. In 1930, K.T. Paul went to England to participate in the Round Table Conference. He decried the tendency among some Christians to keep aloof from the national movement. Like these, there were many other prominent Christians who participated in the national movement either as part of the Congress or outside it. Arthur Jayakumar says that when the non-cooperation movement was started in 1920, there were Indian Christians in the whole of India who took part in it. The All India Conference of Indian Christians held at Lucknow between 27 to 30 December 1922 made a reference to some of the Indian Christians who had suffered imprisonment as a result of their involvement in the national movement. N. H. Tubbs, the principal of the Bishop College, Calcutta, wrote a confidential letter to his mission dated 23 February 1921 stating a very significant feature of the last months have been the deep interest of Christian students in the national non-cooperation movement. In 1930, the editor of The Guardian said that a number of Christian young men have joined the civil disobedience movement. Neeraj Biswas, who later became the Bishop of Assam of the Church of India Burma, and Ceylon, CIBC, joined the national movement in making salt outside Calcutta in 1932. George Thomas notes that Brahmbandha Upadhyaya, 1861 to 1907, a Hindu Catholic sadhu and theologian, played a leading role in the Swadeshi movement. He was also one of the early leaders who enunciated the philosophy of non-cooperation movement. He edited Sandhya, a national journal founded in 1904, and it had a decisive influence on the masses because it was the only vernacular paper in Bengali, which boldly advocated complete Indian nationalism. Again, a conference of leading Christians from all over India held at Ranchi in 1923 passed a resolution to give full support to the national movement. In 1930, among the 78 persons who accompanied Mahatma Gandhi during his salt march from Sabarmati Ashram to Dandi, there was a Christian named Tevarthandiyal Titus, a young disciple of Gandhi and a member of a Christian family of Travancore. In the freedom and pro-democracy movement in Travancore in the 1930s and 1940s, prominent Christian leaders like T. M. Varghese, A. J. John, and Mascarenhas and Akam Acharyan were pioneering forces. Philopos Ilanjikal John, 1903 to 1955, was another prominent member of the Travancore State Congress. Joachim Alva, 1907 to 1979, was another outstanding personality in the history of the freedom struggle. He was profoundly influenced by Mahatma Gandhi's ideals. As a student leader, he was a pioneer of youth movement in India. He gave wholehearted devotion to the national movement and gave up his lucrative job in order to dedicate himself for the freedom struggle. He was also a journalist of high caliber who vigorously advocated the concept of Swadesh and human brotherhood, especially through his forum. Mrs. Violet Alva, 1908 to 1969, was another personality with abiding nationalist interest. About the involvement of the Alvas in the freedom movement, it has been said, the combination of Joachim Alva and Violet Alva to the freedom movement is significant. They risked their all, but they served the country to the full extent of their ability, which they had in plenty. M.V. Kamath, an RSS ideologue and a regular columnist in the RSS Weekly, the organizer, is a person with little sympathy for Christians. Yet in his autobiography, he acknowledges that several Christians took part in the freedom movement and mentions the names of Cyprian Alvarez, Joachim Alva, Marcel A. M. D'Souza as Christian freedom fighters. He says, it is necessary to state that many Roman Catholics I personally know of were very much in the freedom movement and national mainstream. The History of Freedom Movement in Kerala, Volume 2, 2001, contains a mine of information about the participation of Christians in the freedom movement. Travancore received English education by foreign agencies as early as 1806. The new generation, under the impact of Western civilization, came to have a broad social and political outlook. The people became independent in spirit and critical in their attitude. They also became conscious of their rights and privileges. For example, in the popular agitation, which came to be known as the Travancore Memorial or the Malayali Memorial of 1861, drafted and presented to the Maharaja on 11th January 1891, a demand was made for political rights for the people of Travancore. The Malayali Memorial was an important landmark in the political awakening of the people for mightier movements in later days. The submission of the demand by the memorial marks the awakening for the first time of the educated sections of the state of Kerala. It reflected the political aspirations of the leading communities like Nair, Ejhava, Nambudiri, Latin Christian, Syrian Christian and Anglo-Indian. Many Christians were associated with the Malayali Memorial, and some of them presided over its public meetings. The political meetings held at North Parur, Kottayam and Trivandrum were presided over by Christians like Father Hilarion, vicar of the Parur Church, R.T. Rev. Mar Athanasius, the Metropolitan of the Syrian Church, and T.F. Lloyd, an Anglo-Indian, respectively. In the conference held at Kottayam on 3 June 1891 to examine the contents of the memorial was attended by prominent Christians like Varghese Mappila and Mani Katnar, along with leaders of various other communities. George Joseph, 1887 to 1938, was another outstanding Christian who engaged in the freedom struggle. He was one of the 3 members of the Home Rule deputation sent to England in 1918 to present the Indian case before British public. It has been said that the landslide in the opinion of the Indian Christian community in favor of nationalism was very much ascribable to his dynamic leadership. George Joseph represented a high type of culture. He studied at Madras Christian College, then he passed out of the Middle Temple, England in 1909. He started legal practice at Madurai, his town of adoption, and was soon attracted to the Home Rule movement and given training in political organization by Mrs. Annie Besant. He was one of the first batch of barristers who sacrificed their comforts to engage themselves in national work and joined the non-cooperation movement and boycott of foreign cloth shops. At the bidding of Motilal Nehru, he discarded his fashionable dress for the coarser homespun and associated himself as editor of the Allahabad daily The Independent, which used to exercise a profound influence on its readers. In 1920, he courted arrest and was kept in Allahabad prison. He was subsequently sentenced to rigorous imprisonment in the course of the non-cooperation movement in 1921. Later, he became the editor of the Young India, Mahatma Gandhi's weekly. In 1922, he was arrested for sedition and spent a year in the Lucknow district jail along with Jawaharlal Nehru, Mahadev Desai, Purushottam Das Tandon and Devdas Gandhi. In 1924, after resigning his membership of the Indian National Congress, he went back to the bar, shifting his practice later to Madras. But again he became an active Congress worker. George Joseph was also invited to assume the leadership of the Satyagraha movement. He led the Vaikam Satyagraha, for which he was beaten and arrested and sentenced to imprisonment. Mahatma Gandhi wrote to George Joseph on 6 April 1924 that the latter should let the Hindus do the job and not offer Satyagraha himself, so far as the Nagpur resolution of the Congress had called on the Hindus to wipe out untouchability. However, before the letter reached, George Joseph had already joined the Satyagraha. In 1937, George Joseph was elected to the Central Legislative Assembly. He was also the editor of the South Indian Mail. George Joseph expired on 6 March 1938. Jawaharlal Nehru makes a reference to him in his autobiography. Of him it is said that he did not pop his tail between the hind legs, but if he sowed the wind, he was equally ready to reap the whirlwind. C. Samuel Aron was another noteworthy Christian who participated in the national movement. He was a great industrialist of North Malabar. The active participation of the Aros in the national movement began with the Salt Satyagraha movement of 1930. As the Salt Satyagrahis of Kerala reached the village of Chombal on 16 April 1930, the local residents, under the leadership of Samuel Aron, gave them a rousing reception. On 21 April 1930, when the Salt Satyagrahis led by K. Kelappan reached the village of Pariyaram near Payyanur, Mrs. Gracie Aron led the women and showered flowers and rice on them. The Satyagraha camp at Payyanur was located on the spacious premises of the large coconut farm belonging to Samuel Aron. Samuel Aron had given the brighter hotel buildings at Kannanur belonging to him for temporary use by the Congress Satyagrahis intent on breaking the salt law from 22nd May to 1st June 1930. E. M. Govne, collector of Malabar, requested Samuel Aron to evict the Satyagrahis on the threat of prosecution. Samuel Aron replied that he was willing to face the prosecution, though, he added, he could not guess what offense he had committed, for the Congress had not yet declared to be an unlawful organization. He was charged under Section 157 and sentenced to pay a fine of 1,000 rupees or undergo rigorous imprisonment for 6 weeks in default. Since Samuel Aron refused to pay the fine, he was taken to the central jail at Kannanur. On 18th July, the Payyanur police went to the weaving factory owned by Samuel Aron at Pazhayangadi with a warrant for claiming his movable property to realize the fine of 1,000 rupees imposed on him. They took carloads of things found in the factory. It has been observed that the participation of the Aros in the national movement was of unique importance for the Christian community in South India. Among the leading Christian women leaders who took part in the freedom struggle, mention may be made of Mrs. George Joseph, Mrs. Gracie Aron, Mrs. Margaret Pavmani, Miss Mary Thomas and Miss Matilda Kalte. The rise of modern journalism in Kerala gave a great impetus to the growth of political consciousness. The press became an important medium through which the Western ideas of freedom, and democracy began to permeate among the members of the middle class and gradually among the masses. Printing press had been introduced into Kerala by Christian missionaries at the end of the 16th century. Probably Rajya Samachram, published by the Basel Mission from June 1847, was the first journalistic publication in Malayalam, and its virtual editor was the great German scholar Hermann Gundert. Next came Paschimodayam, a monthly, published by Basel Mission at Tellicherry from October 1847. Gundert was associated with this monthly also. It was followed by Paschim Tharka, published from Cochin in 1862 to 1863 and later from Trivandrum. Satyanada Kahalam was published first from Koonmavu and later from Varpujha and Ernakulam. This was the predecessor of Satyandam, which came to be published as a weekly, and a certain C. Varki served as its editor for about 48 years. In 1887, Nazrani Deepika appeared, and in the course of time it became a daily with the title Deepika, published from Kottayam. In 1888, Malala Manorama Company was started at Kottayam by Varghese Mepila Kandathil, 1858 to 1904. He was first the editor of Kerala Mitram, a weekly newspaper, and later of Malala Manorama, 1890 onwards. All these journalistic writings, which contributed to political awakening and shaped public opinion and national consciousness, were run by Christians. Considering the numerical insignificance of the Christians in India compared to the Hindus who form the majority population, the Christian contribution in freedom struggle is indeed commendable. In addition, we need to remember that the vast majority of the Christians of India belong to the lower castes, and during the independence movement, they were still struggling to emancipate themselves from the clutches of the upper castes of Hinduism. Again, Christianity molded the minds of men, women, children, and youth through their educational institutions so that they began to long for freedom from every form of oppression, including the colonial rule. This was also a form of participation of the Christians in the freedom struggle. Thus, patriotism is indeed a Christian virtue. The Indian Christians truly identified themselves with the Indian national movement and demonstrated their deepest concern for the cause. In fact, they were among the prominent persons pioneered and shaped the goals of Indian nationalism. Therefore, as George Thomas rightly observes, the Indian Christian community was not behind any other community in their desire for national freedom and in their readiness to work and make sacrifices for it. But contrary to the general belief, patriotism was not always a Hindu virtue. The narrow-minded Hindus and their organizations like the Hindu Mahasabha, RSS, and others fought for the Hindu religion, Hindu culture, Hindu society, and Hindu Rashtra. Their real enemies were not the British, but the Muslims and the Christians, as is evident from their numerous subversive activities and aggressive pronouncements. Prominent Hindu leaders like Swami Dayananda Saraswati, Swami Vivekananda, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Keshav Baliram Hedgewar, V.D. Savarkar, B.S. Muje, M.S. Golwalkar, and others stood for the Hindu religion and Hindu Rashtra. Theirs was, therefore, a negative nationalism. The Hindu Mahasabha and the RSS did not participate in the Congress-led independence movement. For most of them, reforming Hindu religion and Hindu society had priority over asking the British to quit India, as was the case with Swami Dayananda Saraswati, Swami Vivekananda, and Gopal Krishna Agarkar, a close associate of Tilak. Whenever occasion demanded, several Hindu leaders tried their best to curry favor with the British with the secret hope that when the latter leaves India, the country would be handed over to the Hindutva ideologues so that their pet dream of a Hindu Rashtra could be realized. Nathuram Godse assassinated Mahatma Gandhi because the independent India was not the Hindu Rashtra he had dreamt and labored for. Godse wrote in his last will My ashes may be sunk in the holy Sindhu river, when she will again flow freely under the aegis of the flag of Hindustan. It hardly matters even if it took a couple of generations for realizing my wish. Preserve the ashes till then.
Dear viewers of Jnani's World, the RSS claims to be the greatest embodiment of nationalism in the country today. The people of this country would like to know which movements were launched by the RSS before 1947 to free India from British imperialism.
Who amongst its leaders and cadres suffered repression under colonial rule? Who amongst them went to jail or became martyrs for the cause of the freedom of the country? Any patriot of the country is bound to receive shock of the life after reading the following narratives of Golwalkar about the different phases of the freedom movement. There is another reason for the need of always remaining involved in routine work. There is some unrest in the mind due to the situation developing in the country from time to time. There was such unrest in 1942. Before that, there was the movement in 1930-1931. At that time, many other people had gone to Dr. G. Dr. Hegdewar, the founder of the RSS. This delegation requested Dr. G that this movement will give independence and Sangh should not lag behind. At that time, when a gentleman told Dr. G that he was ready to go to the jail,
as written in Sri Guruji Samagra Darshan, Volume 4, page numbers 39 and 40. Guruji said, "Definitely go, but who will take care of your family then?" That gentleman replied, "I have sufficiently arranged resources not only to run the family expenses for 2 years, but also to pay fines according to the requirements." Then Guruji told him, "If you have fully arranged for the resources, then come out to work for the Sangh for 2 years." After returning home, that gentleman neither went to jail nor came out to work for the Sangh. This incident clearly shows that the RSS leadership was bent upon demoralizing the honest patriotic persons to run away from the cause of freedom movement. Non-cooperation and Quit India movements were two great milestones in the history of the Indian freedom movement, and here is the great thesis of great Golwalkar on these two great happenings of the freedom movement as written in Sri Guruji Samagra Darshan, Volume 4, page number 41. Definitely there are bound to be bad results of struggle. The boys became unruly after the 1920-21 movement. It is not an attempt to throw mud at the leaders, but these are inevitable products after the struggle. The matter is that we could not properly control these results. After 1942, people often started thinking that there was no need to think of the law. Thus, Golwalkar wanted the Indians to respect the draconian and repressive laws of the inhuman British rulers. While narrating the RSS attitude towards Quit India movement 1942 as written in Sri Guruji Samagra Darshan, Volume 4, page number 40, he admitted, "In 1942 also, there was a strong sentiment in the hearts of many. At that time too, the routine work of Sangh continued. Sangh vowed not to do anything directly. However, upheaval, uthal-puthal in the minds of Sangh volunteers continued. Sangh is an organization of inactive persons. Their talks are useless. Not only outsiders but also many of our volunteers did talk like this. They were greatly disgusted too. However, there is not a single publication or document of the Sangh which could throw some light on the great work the RSS did indirectly for the Quit India movement. Golwalkar, the Sarsang Chalak of the RSS, was never able to hide his opposition to any movement against foreign rule. As late as March 1947, when the British rulers had decided to go away from India, Guruji, while addressing the annual day function of the RSS at Delhi, as written in Sri Guruji Samagra Darshan, Volume 1, page number 109, declared that leaders with narrow vision were trying to oppose the state power of the British. While elaborating the point, he said that it was wrong to hold the powerful foreigners responsible for our ills. He decried the tendency of initiating the political movements on the basis of our hatred towards our victors. While narrating an incident in the course of his speech, he got more original on the issue. as written in Sri Guruji Samagra Darshan, Volume 1, page numbers 109 to 110. Once a respectable senior gentleman came to our Shaka, the drill. He had bought a new message for the volunteers of the RSS. When given an opportunity to address the volunteers of the Shaka, he spoke in a very impressive tone. Now, do only one work. Catch hold of the British, bash them and throw them out. Whatever happens, we will see later on. He said this much and sat down. Behind this ideology is a feeling of anger and sorrow towards state power and reactionary tendency based on hatred. The evil with today's political sentimentalism is that its basis is reaction, sorrow, and anger, and opposition to the victors forgetting friendliness.
In all the fairness to Guru Golwalkar, he did not claim that the RSS had been opposed to the British. During the course of his speech at Indore as late as 1960, as written in Sri Guruji Samagra Darshan, Volume 4, page number 2, he said, "Many people worked with the inspiration to free the country by throwing the British out. After formal departure of the British, this inspiration lagged. In fact, there was no need to have this much inspiration. We should remember that in our pledge we had talked of the freedom of the country through defending religion and culture. There is no mention of departure of the British in that. The RSS was not even willing to regard colonial domination as an injustice." In a speech on June 8, 1942, as written in Sri Guruji Samagra Darshan, Volume 1, page number 1112, Golwalkar declared, "Sangh does not want to blame anybody else for the present degraded state of the society. When the people start blaming others, then there is weakness in them. It is futile to blame the strong for the injustice done to the weak. Sangh does not want to waste its invaluable time in abusing or criticizing others. If we know that the large fish eat the smaller ones, it is outright madness to blame the big fish. Law of nature, whether good or bad, it is true all the time. This rule does not change by terming it unjust." Golwalkar was not alone in denigrating the freedom struggle and glorifying the British ruler. His guru and founder of the RSS, Hegdewar, had similar views.
The official biography of Hegdewar Bishikar, CP Sangharsh ke Beech, Dr. Keshavrao Hegdewar, Suruchi, 1994, page number 24, has the following meaningful statement. After establishing Sangh, Dr. Sahib in his speeches used to talk only of Hindu organization. Direct comment on government used to be nil. It may be interesting to know that the RSS literature available on Hegdewar so far has absolutely no reference of any indirect comment on the barbaric and dehumanized Gora Shahi, the British rule. Even the close scrutiny and scanning of the nationalist press of the times of the freedom struggle throws no light on any role played by the RSS. The RSS thus can be seen as having played an extremely dubious role throughout the freedom struggle. All evidence points towards its disruptive activities and the fact that the organization and its leadership were never a part of the freedom movement. Dear viewers of Gnani's World, the single most important contribution of the RSS was to consistently disrupt the unified struggle of the Indian people against British imperialism through its extreme exclusivist slogan of Hindu Rashtra. Shyam Prasad Mukherjee, RSS Hindutva icon who allied with the Muslim League and the British rulers. The Hindutva Brigade is fond of declaring Dr. Mukherjee as great nationalist and patriot who laid down his life for the unity of the nation. Modi described him as a statesman, thinker, and a patriot who devoted his life towards strengthening national integration. The Hindutva rhetoric about patriotism of Dr. Mukherjee needs to be cross-checked with the contemporary documents available even in RSS and Hindu Mahasabha archives. Perusal of these documents clearly shows that the claim that Dr. Shyam Prakash Mukherjee was a selfless patriot and a great patriot right from his birth is a white lie. Dr. Mukherjee never ever participated in the anti-colonial freedom struggle. If patriotism means being part of the freedom struggle and making sacrifices, Dr. Mukherjee not only kept aloof from it but also betrayed it by collaborating with the British rulers and the Muslim League in order to crush and communally polarize the anti-British liberation movement. In pre-independence times, he was a prominent leader of the Hindu Mahasabha, which was led by V.D. Savarkar. When in 1942, Congress gave a call to the British rulers to leave India immediately by launching Quit India movement, the rulers responded to this mass movement by unleashing a reign of terror. Congress was banned, its provincial governments were dismissed, whole of India was turned into jail, and thousands died in the repression unleashed by armed forces of the British and native rulers. The crime of many of those who were killed was that they were carrying a tricolor. Hindu nationalist organizations, namely Hindu Mahasabha and RSS with Muslim nationalist organization, Muslim League, not only boycotted Quit India movement but also decided to support the British government in its repressive campaign. The Hindu Mahasabha president, self-proclaimed Veer Savarkar, chronicled this ganging up of Hindu Mahasabha with the Muslim League in his presidential speech to the 24th session of the Hindu Mahasabha at Kanpur in 1942.
This shocking confession appears later in the last chapter of the book Mukherjee Shyam Prasad, Leaves from a Diary, Oxford University Press, Delhi, page number 179. Following the Hindu Mahasabha directive to cooperate with the British, the Hindutva icon Dr. Mukherjee assured the British masters through a letter dated July 26, 1942. It read, "Let me now refer to the situation that may be created in the province as a result of any widespread movement launched by the Congress. Anybody who during the war plans to stir up mass feeling resulting internal disturbance or insecurity must be resisted by any government that may function for the time being." His letter to Bengal governor that the Fazlul Haq led Bengal government along with its alliance partner Hindu Mahasabha, Mukherjee being deputy CM in this ministry, made concrete suggestion for crushing the QIM. As cited in Norani AG, the RSS and BJP, a division of Labour Leftward Books, Delhi, page number 56 and 57, he wrote, "The question is how to combat this movement, that's Quit India and Bengal. The administration of the province should be carried on in such a manner that in spite of the best efforts of the Congress, this movement will fail to take root in the province. It should be possible for us, especially responsible ministers, to be able to tell the public that the freedom for which the Congress had started the movement already belongs to the representatives of the people. In some spheres, it might be limited during the emergency. Indians have to trust the British, not for the sake for Britain, not for any advantage that the British might gain, but for the maintenance of the defense and freedom of the province itself. You, as governor, will function as the constitutional head of the province and will be guided entirely on the advice of your minister." A prominent historian, R.C. Majumdar, who is also regarded as a true Bharatiya or Indian historian by the Hindutva Brigade, as cited in Majumdar R.C. History of Modern Bengal, Volume 2, G. Bharadwaj & Co., Calcutta, page number 350. Commenting on this letter, he wrote, "Shyama Prasad ended the letter with the discussion of the mass movement organized by the Congress. He expressed the apprehension that the movement would create internal disorder and will endanger internal security during the war by exciting popular feeling, and he opined that any government in power has to suppress it, but that according to him could not be done only by persecution. In that letter, he mentioned item-wise steps to be taken for dealing with the situation. Dear viewers of Gnaniswal, backstabbing Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. In a more shocking development, the Hindu Mahasabha of Dr. Mukherjee decided to help the British rulers in World War II. It was the time when Subhash Chandra Bose, known as Netaji, was organizing the INA, Azad Hind Fauj, and a military campaign to force the British out. The extent to which the Hindu Mahasabha was willing to help the British masters is clear from the following directive issued by Savarkar as president of the Mahasabha. As written in Savarkar V.D., Samagra Savarkar Vangmaya, Hindu Rashtra Darshan, Volume 6, Maharashtra Prantika Hindu Sabha, Pune, 1963, page number 460. So far as Indian defense is concerned, Hindudom must ally unhesitatingly in a spirit of responsive cooperation with the war effort of the Indian government so far as it is consistent with the Hindu interest. by joining the army, navy and the aerial forces in as large a number as possible by securing an entry into all ordnance, ammunition and warcraft factories. Again, it must be noted that Japan's entry into the war has exposed us directly and immediately the attack by Britain's enemies. Consequently, whether we like it or not, we shall have to defend our own hearth and home against the ravages of the war. And this can only be done by intensifying the government's war effort to defend India. Hindu Mahasabhas must therefore rouse Hindus, especially in the provinces of Bengal and Assam, as effectively as possible to enter the military forces of all arms without losing a single minute. Dear viewers of Gnani's World, despite all the shocking facts being available in the Hindutva archives, the Hindutva brigades continue to falsify history. The Hindutva juggernaut is in full stream, demolishing the great, heroic and selfless sacrifice of thousands of Indians who laid down their lives for the freedom of India against the colonial masters and their stooges like Prince and Muslim League. The Hindutva gang is trying to replace the braves and heroes of anti-colonial history with stooges and collaborators. It makes one fact very clear, that BJP, RSS does not have a single person to be presented as freedom fighter. However, it is terribly sad that those who love martyrs of the great anti-colonial struggle and respect glorious liberation struggle are not there to encircle places in protest where the Hindutva denigrates the real martyrs and freedom fighters and attempts to establish collaboration as patriots. Now, dear viewers of Gnani's World, everything is in front of you in black and white. Identify the real face of the RSS.
The Indian struggle for independence was a complex phenomenon with various streams and forces contributing to it. Among those who fought for the freedom of India were great men like Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru and other secularists. Most of them belonged to the Indian National Congress. There were also true patriots who did not belong to it. However, the one thing common to all of them is that they conceived a secular and culturally pluralistic India, unlike the Hindutva ideologues, and among them were also, as we have seen above, many Christians. Their vision of India went far beyond the Hindu Rashtra. Thus, they advocated positive nationalism. Hence, the question as to who really fought for the freedom of India can be very embarrassing for many Hindutva organizations and Hindutva leaders like B.D. Savarkar, M.S. Golwalkar, Arun Shourie, and their acolytes in the Sangh Parivar. Conclusion. The history of India from the second half of the 19th and first half of the 20th centuries was a history of the national struggle for freedom. We have also noted that there were several factors for the rise of nationalism. In the courses of the national movement, the Indian Christians had raised their voices through different organizations and sometimes as individuals. The Indian Christians as a church did not participate in the national movement. However, there were quite a good number of Indian Christians who had made valuable contributions towards the national movement for freedom. Dear viewers of Gnani's World, if you liked our video, please comment your feedback and press the like button and share with others to spread the truth. If you're here for first time, please do subscribe for more knowledge-packed videos. Thank you.